In tonight's Tax Insider, the Pentagon's budget. Senate lawmakers have passed the 2016 National Defense Authorization Act, setting up a showdown with the White House. President Obama has threatened to veto the bill, but should he? For insight, we turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Ryan Alexander, president of the Nonpartisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Ryan, Mr. Obama has called the current version of the NDAA irresponsible. It provides a $515 billion base budget, plus nearly $90 billion more for overseas contingency operations. These numbers break the spending caps put in place by the 2011 Budget Control Act. How did that happen, and where's the money going?
I think there's one thing that everybody in Congress agrees on right now, which is that they kind of wish that they had never passed the Budget Control Act. Both sides really want to spend more money, and what's happening here is that the Republicans really want to spend more money on defense, and they'd like to stuff that money into the overseas contingency account. President Obama wants to spend more money on both sides, and so he doesn't want to pass a bill that authorizes a significant increase, through budget gimmicks for defense spending without addressing the domestic discretionary budget. This is about kind of the leverage between the priorities of the White House and the priorities of the Republican Congress. And
Obama has threatened to veto every NDAA since he's been in office, but has never followed through. All right, so should he this time? Minority Leader Harry Reid thinks the president could win this one.
There's a lot bad in this bill, and the National Defense Authorization Act kind of directs the Pentagon to ignore the advice of the Office of Management and Budget, and kind of allows them to put more money into the overseas contingency account that are neither overseas nor contingent. So there's a lot in there to be concerned about. That said, it's the NDAA has been become law for more than 50 years. I would be a little surprised if he does follow through with his veto, but I think he might win this one. He might be able to get some concessions out of Congress.
All right, let's say if the NDAA is vetoed, what happens next? Is there any guarantee Congress will fix all the spending issues?
No guarantees that Congress will do anything,
right,
let alone spend all the spending issues, fix all the spending issues. We've been looking for many years, for almost a decade now, of significant battles over spending levels, over revenue levels, and kind of how to get them closer into line. So I think that there are certainly no guarantees that we'll see that. After whatever happens with the authorization bill, the appropriations process has to get going. And come December 11th, we're going to see some package of appropriations. What maybe before or after a shutdown, we'll see. And the rubber will really hit the road there.
That date's going to get here before we know it. All right, let's move on. Another piece of legislation left in limbo has been the transportation bill. In August, President Obama signed a 3-month extension. Has there been any progress on a long-term deal?
There has been some progress, but it's still unlikely that we'll be able to see a full 6-year transportation bill signed before this one expires again, this short-term extension expires. The Senate bill is much more expansive than the House package, and they just don't have time to work out a deal. So I would predict that they do another short-term extension.
Well, are they going to listen to you? What happens when the extension expires at the end of the month then?
So what happens I think, again, I do think they will do a short-term extension. What happens when they come to the end of the month is they either have to authorize a bunch of spending. The problem, as always, is that there's lots of appetite for spending, little appetite for finding the revenue. And if we get to the end of the month and the House and the Senate haven't come closer to a deal, the Senate hasn't said, yes, we'll deal with a shorter-term bill that where we pay for everything that we are willing to spend, and the House doesn't say, yes, we're willing to do a 6-year bill where we only have 3 years of money, then I think, they could do an extension that's as short as 1 or 2 months. I think that's very likely. And then I don't think that we'll stop work on the highways. It's just one of those things that Congress really does not like to do.
Now, without getting political, and I know you're nonpartisan too, your group, we've got a majority of Republicans who now can write bills, send them on. If Obama vetoes them, fine. But the biggest complaint I hear from people like Larry Kudlow, a former Reaganite, and others, is that they're just not doing anything. Even though the Republicans have this majority, if you were advising them from your taxpayer point of view, what should they be doing now that they're not even grasping at?
I think it's just important to observe that while the Republican Party has a majority, there's lots of disagreement within that majority.
That's true, yeah.
And I think that's one of the bigger problems in Washington today. And it's, those are heartfelt disagreements. Those people really disagree, but they agree on enough to be in the same party, and they've got to work out their differences so that they can move forward. I think that, when you look at the polarization we see in politics today, it's easy to overlook the fact that all along the political spectrum, there's nuance, there's disagreement, and if the Republicans want to move forward with the legislative agenda, they have to figure out a way to deal with those nuances and disagreements within their own conference.
It's good to get your insight. Ryan Alexander, president of the Nonpartisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.